Hey everybody. So, we're not going to be having services tonight, and I hope you guys are having an awesome snow day. Hope you guys are enjoying that. I know that I am, and as soon as I'm done filming this, I'm going to go right back outside and continue to play in the snow. But, since we're not having services tonight, what I wanted to do is go ahead and present a lesson to you guys. Now, I'm not going to start the new series that we're about to start on, and I went ahead and posted that. Some of you guys have already seen that. It's entitled Follow Me, and it's obviously about back in the Gospels when Jesus commanded the apostles and disciples to follow him. It kind of focuses on that, but it's not only talking about that, but also what we do and how we go about following him. So I'm really excited to be able to present that, but like I said, we're going to wait until next week to do that. So I actually have a lesson specifically for today that I wanted to share with you guys. When I was younger, I used to play what was called the quiet game, and usually it was my parents that made me play it. But the way this game works, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have played it at some point in time, but the way it works is you will be in a car or some kind of confined location, and everybody will be talking too much. There'll just be too much noise at the time. And so somebody says, hey, let's play the quiet game. And they say, the first one to talk loses. That's the only rule to the game. The first one to talk loses. Sometimes it's also the last one to talk wins. But regardless of how you play the exact rules of that game, it basically goes from a competition of everyone saying as much as they want and trying to get their opinion and their part of the conversation to be heard, to now everyone's doing everything they can to stay silent. And everyone is trying as hard as they can to not say anything. Now, in the Bible, we are often fascinated by the big things. We're often fascinated so quickly by in the Old Testament where all the big things happen. For example, a flood that covers the whole earth, or plagues that consume an entire nation, or maybe a city that people walk around for several days and it just comes tumbling down. We often think through all of these examples and through all these stories that the bigger it is, the better. We often think the bigger and the more powerful these accounts of God that we see, the better. But what we constantly overlook and we don't actually focus on as much is that God shows his power through silence. A lot of times, some of the most incredible things happen when no one is speaking, when there's not some big, loud spectacle being made. If you guys would, go ahead and turn to 1 Kings chapter 19. Hopefully you have your Bibles with you. If not, you can pause it right now, and you can go get them. But hopefully you have them with you. So 1 Kings chapter 19. And this is actually during the time of Elijah. This is a time where Elijah had actually become very, very discouraged. And right before this, in 1 Kings chapter 18, he had actually just showed the people and the prophets of Baal who the true God was. And of course, this was the story with the two different offerings and all of the prophets of Baal doing everything they could to get theirs to light on fire because of Baal. And then Elijah doing all these things to almost to make it impossible for his offer to be lit, to be on fire. And then, of course, he asked for God to light it. And through that story, we see that God obviously burns the offering of Elijah. And all these people all of a sudden realize that God is the one and true God. And so we see this big thing take place. We see all these people listening to the words of Elijah because of what had taken place. And right after this, we then see that Jezebel had vowed to take the life of Elijah because of what he had done. And Elijah is definitely not happy about this. He actually goes off and he hides. And we're going to actually pick up in verse 9 where we see that he is coming to hide into a cave. So beginning in verse 9 of 1 Kings chapter 19, It says, there he came to a cave and lodged in it. And behold, the word of God came to him, and he said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? And he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away. And the Lord said, go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore the mountains and broke in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, the sound of a low whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. In this passage, we see that the Lord tells Elijah to go stand on a mountain. And so he goes out and he stands on this mountain, and these three things come by him. We see a strong wind pass by him, one so strong that it actually is breaking rocks off of the mountain. Then we also see an earthquake, and after that, a fire. But as we learn and go through these three different things that are taking place, we find out that the strong wind comes by, but God's not in the wind. We see the earthquake happen, but God is not in the earthquake. And we see a fire, but God's not in the fire. And after this, we see what is called a low whisper. And in certain translations, and depending on the way it's translated, it can actually mean a thin silence, or often just translated as silence. But right after this takes place, right after this low whisper, this thin silence, Elijah heard it, and he knew that this was the Lord. He knew that this was how the Lord was coming to him. You see, it isn't just in the midst of the big things that we grow. It's not just when we're all together and when we're all at youth rallies, or whether we're all here in class or in camp or even at campaign. Those are not the only times when we grow. It's when we have silence as well. It's the times when we actually feel like we're the ones that are playing the quiet game, when there's nothing else going on around us. And it's in this silence when we can really focus on speaking to God and learning more about Him and truly seeing who He is. Then when we're with others, we can be that example that we've grown from in the silence. And we see that Jesus knew the importance of silence very well. He very quickly and very easily understood this concept. If you would, go ahead and go to Luke chapter 5, and we're going to read verses 15 and 16 of Luke chapter 5. And it reads, beginning in verse 15, but now even more, the report about him went abroad, and great crowds gathered to hear him and to be healed of their infirmities. But he would withdraw to desolate places and pray. And in another passage in Mark chapter 1, verse 35 reads, and rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he departed and went out to a desolate place, and there he prayed. And in fact, right after this, Simon Peter actually goes and finds him, and then shortly after that, they go back into a crowd. You see, Jesus spends so much time around crowds, around big groups of people, where big things take place, where everything that he says is just so big, and so many people learn so much from it. But even Jesus knew that there were times where he did need to be doing these things, but other times when he needed to be in a desolate place where there was no one else. So just him and God could build that relationship so he could learn and communicate to God. Because it's in this silence when we can prepare ourselves to do great things for God. It's in this silence that we can grow. This silence is when we learn ourselves, more than in any other time, how to truly grow for Him. Now, right now, this is usually a time where we are all together. We're usually all in this room, and in case you can't tell, yes, this is the youth room. We're usually all in here together right about this time, if you're watching this, right around time for evening services. But what I challenge you to do is to spend some time in silence. Spend time just you in prayer and reading. You can continue to read through the story of Elijah and kind of see what happens in that story. Or feel free to read through one of the gospel accounts. Go through the life of Jesus, the life of Christ, and see how important this silence was to him, but also just refresh your memory on this idea of his life. Whatever that might be, I challenge you to spend some time in silence. Because, again, this silence is when we can really, truly focus. So many times we think that it's during the big things, during when all the big things take place. That's when we can grow and we can learn more about Christ and about God and His Word. But we also have to remember how important the silence really is. I hope you guys have learned something from this. Again, next week we are going to be looking at the concept "Follow Me." We're going to be spending several weeks on that. Also, a couple quick things. I do encourage you guys to continue to pray for those on the prayer wall. And now that I think about it, it's been a while since I posted on Instagram, so I'm going to repost it for you guys. It should be on there soon. Also, we do have an area-wide coming up in a week and a half from now, and that's going to be taking place at Midway. We'll most likely leave at about 5 p.m. So that's most of what's going on now. But I hope you guys continue to have an awesome snow days. I don't know how long this is going to last. I'm not a weatherman. But I hope you guys enjoy it, and I look forward to having you guys back here soon. So, have fun.